Legend of Total War here, and today I want to do a bit of a reaction video to Pixelated Apollo's video called Total War Has Fallen, which he released 2 days ago. I'll leave a link to this video in the description. Highly recommend you check it out either before or after this video. It's entirely up to you. I'm not going to be going through the video and watching it in this one here, but more addressing some of the points and continuing on the conversation that he started here, which I do really appreciate that Pixelated Apollo has done. And just started this conversation. I don't know if he really wanted anyone to react to it. Maybe he thought some people would, maybe he thought they wouldn't. I don't know. I haven't spoken to him personally or privately in regards to this. But I watched this video twice. I made some notes on the things that he said. Some of the things he was saying are very interesting. But also some of the things he said I think were actually not very good. And I'm going to address those and just be honest with him about, or with you guys as well, with, I guess, some of the argument fallacies that he's made, so that we can stop making these argument fallacies, because they don't serve any purpose, and they actually serve to actually invalidate everything that he said here. And I don't want to see that, because he's got some really good points, but he's made some dumb points as well. And the thing is, in this day and age, is that if you are 95% correct about stuff, but people will hone in on that 5% that you're incorrect, and use that 5% to invalidate everything else that you've said. So you've got to be really careful about making argumental fallacies. Now, the first thing I want to address here is the actual title, Total War Has Fallen. Do I personally think that Total War has fallen? Is it the end of Total War? Yes and no. It depends on what happens in the next few years. We're in a crossroads right now, because in the past couple of years, Creative Assembly has released some of its best content ever, but also simultaneously some of its worst. And so I really don't believe that Creative Assembly is completely immune to having themselves shut down. I think that if they make the wrong plays, if the next couple of Total War games are flops, that Sega will shut them down. It won't be like an instant thing. They'll keep losing more staff members, and then eventually the company will just get shut down by Sega, because Sega owns them. Or they'll get sold off to crypto bros. Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen with Relic? Could it be the same fate as them? We just don't know. But simultaneously, some of the proposed rumors that we've heard about, things like 40k and the Star Wars and that kind of stuff, Medieval 3 possibly, I've heard rumors about it. They are at this point just rumors. These have a lot of potential if they make the right plays. Now, these projects are probably still in relatively early development, except for 40k. I think that's pretty far along. And so by having these conversations, hopefully Creative Assembly is paying attention to them, because what I would like to see happen is for them to pay attention to what the community by and large is saying. Not necessarily pay attention to me. I really don't care if they listen to me whatsoever, but hopefully other people will make videos on this. Like, I really hope that somebody makes a reaction video on my video and just picks apart everything that I say, agrees with it, disagrees with it, whatever, just to get the conversation rolling, so that Creative Assembly can pay attention to what the community by and large wants, pay attention to the comments more than anything, and not make the same mistakes that they've made in the past, and make a fantastic game. Because what I would love to see is the next Total War game hit wide appeal. It get 2, 3, 4 million people purchase it, even more, 10 million people purchase it. I would love to see that, and it actually be like a really good game that people get a lot of enjoyment out of. Now, no matter what Total War game they make, there's always going to be some people that will think it's shit. And I think it's really important that we recognize that not everybody has got the same taste. And that's something that I think that Pixelated Apollo here kind of made a mistake with his argument fallacy, in that he's made the no true Scotsman argument fallacy, or an argument of purity. And that's where he said, somewhere in the middle there, if you're a true fan of Total War, a fan of the old games, and I think as soon as you make that distinction, somebody who is on the opposing side can just bring up a mirror in front of you and use the exact same argument to dismantle everything that you say. So somebody who is a fan of Total War Warhammer can just go, well, we're the true fans of Total War because we're the ones that are actually paying money for it and keeping Creative Assembly alive, or something along those lines. They can say the exact same thing to invalidate what you say. And so if we use arguments of purity, everybody invalidates everyone else, and nobody gets to have their say, and everybody's hopes for a Total War game are invalidated. This is something we want to avoid, and something that happens a lot on every aspect, whether it be on YouTube, in the forums. It happens all over the place, and I'll bring up some of this stuff over here as well in a moment, and maybe I'll actually do that now. that'd be a good time. So this his video went on the Reddit. There was actually multiple posts of it on the Reddit. Total War Has Fallen. This will usually happen with Reddit. If somebody makes a negative video or does something negative, that is way more likely to get posted on the Reddit than if somebody says anything positive. Like if I make a video that says Total War is in the greatest state ever, that video will never fucking make it on the Reddit, right? But if I say Total War is dog shit and is about to die, it's guaranteed it's going to hit in the Reddit, because people do focus on negativity on the Reddit. It's just unfortunate, but this is what happens. Anyway, so we get this really interesting scenario here of like an invalidation loop. So first thing I want to do, so here we go. Old game good, new game bad, new fan bad, the West has fallen. There, I saved you 50 minutes of YouTube only uploads custom battles. So we start the invalidation. This person here is now invalidating everything that Pixelated Apollo is saying, because Pixelated Apollo has just invalidated everything that he said. So they're just using the same argument back at them, essentially. But this bit here, so from Professor Hobo31, sorry if I'm like he didn't want to be referencing this, whatever. But something really interesting happened here. So I want to read out this word for word. So he says, I've been in this sub for the better part of a decade and have been a moderator for about 6 years. The part about the fandom having changed, he says, replaced as if it was intentional by CA, which I don't really agree with, is 100% true. So there's something that Pixelated Apollo said in his video that, the people that are playing Total War game or paying for Total War games now are completely different to the people who were paying for Total War games 20 years ago. And it's not 100% different because, I was there before and I'm there now. I've been a fan of Total War for nearly 20 years now, I guess. And actually, no, for exactly 20 years, because I got into it in 2004. Anyway, but I also know that many of you guys who follow me, you tell me that you've been fans ever since like Rome 1 and Medieval 2 as well. So some of us have been here the whole time, but there's definitely been a fan replacement. But the thing is, that is normal within any franchise. You're going to have the older people grow out of a particular fan base and move on, and people who were not even freaking born when Rome 1 came out become fans. Here's the thing to really understand is that somebody who was born when Rome 1 first came out, they're 20 years old to like this year. That's pretty nuts, right? So they've become fans of it, and some of these games are older than they are. But it's really hard for somebody to go back and play games that are older than them. I understand that point of view. But anyway, getting a little bit off topic there. So then it continues to say, since the first Warhammer game became a huge success. Funny thing about that, the first Warhammer game wasn't a huge success. Now, I had friends that worked at Creative Assembly at the time, and they actually said to me that Warhammer 1, like it wasn't not a success, but it was actually kind of a disappointment because they thought it would sell more. They thought that more people who had bought Rome 2 were going to buy Warhammer, but for the most part, it sold about the same amount as Rome 2. So it wasn't a huge success at first. The huge success came much later. Anyway, a part of the fandom became very split. Yeah, that's true. When it came to Warhammer, it did split the fan base. There's no doubt about that. There was a big influx of players who never really played any game pre-Warhammer 1, and the biggest discussion on most new historical games is how much gameplay from Warhammer was borrowed each time. And that's true. Warhammer has seeped into a lot of the games that came after it, and it's not to their benefit, but we'll get into that in a bit later as well. I don't agree with or care to watch a 50-minute video on the topic of some rando YouTuber molding. So this is, again, invalidation stuff, using stuff like rando YouTuber. Well, I guess he is kind of molding, fair enough. But this is a invalidating statement. Pixelated Apollo has 947,000 subscribers. That's not rando. But typically speaking, the Reddit invalidates YouTubers in general. They just don't think YouTubers are a big deal. And that's fair enough, maybe we're not a big deal. But this is not an uncommon opinion that you would hear from Reddit. They just don't care much about YouTubers. And that's fine, because YouTubers tend not to care much about Reddit. They spend a lot of time invalidating each other. That's fine. But there is some truth into the whole affair. Just dismissing it as nothing important doesn't help either way. And both the fans and CA have a tendency to just try and dismiss all the criticism or any content creator who takes issue with the game. I'd rather there was some discussion about the facts about the fact that a chunk of the historical only players are pretty disappointed with the latest releases. Then comments like this and two sides who add nothing to the discussion. One side says the old games were better. The other side says shut up and enjoy the new ones, and nothing changes. Years and years of this gets pretty tedious. I completely agree with this statement here, and this is kind of what I really want to be talking about in this video here, but it's just pretty funny. He says we shouldn't be dismissing conversation when he's like dismissing what has been one of the biggest voices in Total War on YouTube. If you want to dismiss YouTube, that's entirely fine, but it doesn't help. It's contradictory statements in my opinion. But anyway, and then the funniest thing here is like this guy said I don't know if he's a moderator currently of like the Total War subreddit, but it does say that he says he is. But I don't know, maybe there would be something on here that would say he's a moderator, but I don't know. That's not really important for this. But then we come down this way here and we get to this point and we can see that he's been downvoted for this, right? Unfortunately, a lot of the old historical onlys have a severe case of rose-tinted glasses. So just taking from this one here. I've never liked that argument for various reasons. I won't go into them. I'll just say that Rome 2 and Medieval 2, old and older, have 4 times the player today as Pharaoh Dynasty, which is true. It's just another argument to dismiss the entire argument. Dismiss, nothing changes. A question as simple as, is there truly no gameplay loops and design ideas from the old games that should return, will simply never be discussed and thus answered at large because everyone is too busy butting heads and dismissing it all with this or that gotcha opinion. It's like what I said before, 95% correct, 5% incorrect. They will use that 5% gotcha bitch and then just dismiss everything that you've said, because that's what it's all about today. You have to be 100% correct or you're 0% correct. That's basically how it is. And it could be the case here with this. I might get a couple of things wrong and someone would be like, well, let's just dismiss everything the Legend of Total War just said. It's all bullshit. And we're not going to get anywhere. The thing is, if I'm wrong about something, call me out on it. I'm not like trying to encourage that because I do want to hear a discussion about it. I'm probably wrong about some things. Anyway, Attila was the last main game in the series where I felt any hype pre-release from the gameplay trailers, and it's been 10 years, and I've played every game since Rome 1. It's ridiculous that we've had to reach such a state. It's pretty funny. Dismiss, and what does the subreddit do? Fucking dismiss! Get the hell out of here, bitch! How dare you say that? They've just proven him right by dismissing him. It's so fucking funny that people do this shit. And it happens every day on the subreddit and on YouTube and everywhere. It's just internet culture. It's just dismiss, deplatform, put down, be negative. Don't. If they don't have the exact same opinion that we have, they're not one of us. We're the true fans. We're the true fans. We're the pure ones. We are the holy ones. Shut the fuck up with that argument. I'm not a true fan. You're not a true fan. Everyone's a true fan. Okay. It's just these arguments don't get us anywhere. But anyway, so yeah, the dismissing of other people's opinions. So what does make a Total War fan? I think it's pretty. I think we can all agree on a very easily defined term. If you play a Total War game in the last month or on a regular basis over the last few years and are interested, like you would purchase a Total War game in future. If you have oh my god, come on, hurry up. Let's get to the point. If you've played a Total War game in the past year and you actively do enjoy Total War games, even if it's only 1 or 2 of them, and even if it's the first one, Shogun 1 or Medieval 1, then you're a fan of Total War. And if there was a new Total War that would come out that exactly appeals to what you want out of a Total War game, then that makes you a Total War fan. And saying that only the old Total War fans or only the new Total War fans matter, this gets us nowhere. We need to stop all this dismissing. Everybody here's opinion matters. The only time I would say that it doesn't matter is when you're trying to dismiss someone else. But it's only for that section. Everything else about their opinion should be validated. If hopefully I made that perfectly clear, and I hope someone does react to this. But one thing that has been a big problem, increasingly so, and it's not just unique to Total War, it's really internet culture in general, is the dismissing of other people's opinions, because humans are going to have different opinions on so many different things. We need to embrace the fact that we've got different opinions And that's how we grow our opinions and become more mature adults. That's how I grew as a person. Listen to other people, take on their advice, and adapt to it. Not just be insulated, stay within your own bubble, be like, I'm right, 100% correct, and everybody else in the world is wrong. That's a very bad way to go about things. And unfortunately, I see a lot of it these days. And what ends up happening as well is that the people who want to have this conversation, who want to talk about the state of these games, they get shouted down, they get downvoted, and after a while, they just leave. Now, here's another thing that the next thing I want to talk about that is a very worrying sign for Total War, going on to the Total War Has Fallen aspect. Now, Creative Assembly should be grateful for the bad launch of Rome 2 and Warhammer 3, right? Those two games specifically. And should consider those vastly better launches than what happened with Total War Pharaoh. You're going to have to really hear me out on this because it's really important. And I have a habit of not articulating this stuff very well because I didn't write a script. I'm just shooting off the cuff. Hopefully I get it right, right? Hopefully I can communicate this correctly. But I can't stress enough how important this is. So why is it that Rome 2's launch should actually be kind of celebrated? You know, it was a fucking shitfest, right? There was so much anger going around everywhere. Everyone was so angry about the state of Rome 2. Same thing with Total War Warhammer. It was a toxic time to be around. But why is that preferable to Pharaoh? People don't stick around and get angry about things that they don't care about. You know, the fact that people were angry about it meant that they actually wanted this game to be different. They wanted it to be better. And there was a lot of interest around it. If you have something that there isn't a lot of outrage about, if there isn't a lot of discussion going around, then that means that people are disinterested. Now, when it comes to a franchise, when you're trying to sell product to someone, the worst thing that can happen is apathy. When it came to Rome 2 and Warhammer 3's launch, you had anger. You had a lot of anger from the fan base. Anger is preferable to apathy, because let's go through a few things here. This is what happens when you have apathy. If we have a look at Pharaoh, and I get that we've gone over this stuff loads of times before, but Pharaoh dynasties, so this is Pharaoh and dynasties, it's all lumped in the same. In terms of owner estimation, somewhere between 100,000 and 176,000, roughly. You know, it could be slightly more than that, but there's no way that it's actually 2 million. There's just no way. The player counts just doesn't match for that to be the case, right? This is the lowest sold Total War game of all time, but it actually has 86% positive reviews. So what this indicates is that the people who are actually interested in the game, they purchased it. And the people who weren't interested in the game, they didn't buy it. And then they also didn't talk about it because there wasn't this huge outrage that happened with Total War Pharaoh. You know, when the trailer was announced, the community for the most part went, lol, Total War Dung Beetle, and then just were like, I'm moving on with my life. There wasn't like this huge outrage. You know, there wasn't loads of YouTubers going, this is bullshit, where Medieval 3 when? It was so much a case of, oh man, I'm sick of waiting for Medieval 3. I'm going to go do something else. And you had a huge portion of the fan base, and I noticed this just to such a huge degree, just basically walk away from Total War entirely. And that is ground that Creative Assembly is going to have to work so much more to get back. This is one of the reasons why I think that Total War Pharaoh is the worst Total War game of all time. Not because it's not at 50% positive reviews. It's because it has the worst amount of player apathy towards than any other Total War game. And apathy is the worst thing that a company could ever want for its franchise. And the apathy is to such a huge degree. I've never seen this in a Total War game. It is so concerning. But it could just be because, you know, Troy 2 plus another Bronze Age Total War. Hard to say. But when we compare things to, like, let's go to Rome 2, right? Let's go to Rome 2. You know, a game that had terrible launch, still has a lot of players to this day, like what they said. You know, millions of people purchased it. And the thing is, it had 1 million purchases on day one. You know, and it's got a lower percentage positive review rate than Total War Dynasty, Pharaoh Dynasty. But if you use the percentage to be like, well, Pharaoh Dynasty is clearly better than Rome 2 because its percentage is like 6% higher. Yeah, but it also has like barely any reviews whatsoever. And also, you got to consider the original Pharaoh reviews being mixed as well on top of that. But anyway, look at huge numbers of players. And don't forget, this game, most of those sales would have been made in the first year that it came out. And don't forget, Pharaoh's been out for a year now. But also, if we have a look here, Thrones of Britannia. This is another one where people were angry about this game, right? There was a bit of anger about it when it first came out. It didn't have apathy, right? Hang on, what happened here? Why are we not seeing what we need to see? Let me just pause it and figure out what's going on here. Yeah, well, it took me a second, but I don't know what happened. It just didn't show this what I wanted to see. So, Thrones of Britannia, which was previously like probably the lowest sold Total War game, sitting at somewhere around 500,000. Now, Thrones of Britannia was not a good Total War game. It hurt the brand quite considerably. But, it sold 500,000 copies over its course of time. And you could argue as well that, but Legend, that's over the course of 6 years. I do not believe... Look, I'm not willing to sit here and wait 6 years and then showcase how Pharaoh didn't get to 500,000 sales. The sales numbers is not going to increase over time. And the thing is as well, the sales will become less valuable over time as they become like, oh, look, you can get Pharaoh for $1. That doesn't mean anything to Creative Assembly, right? And... again, you're going to have other arguments, because I've heard these arguments before. Legend, why does it even matter? Why do you always bring out how many people purchase the game? Well, because Creative Assembly just lost like half of its employees, maybe more than that, right? So they have to sell these games. Sure, a lot of that was due to hyenas, and we're going to be paying for that for years to come. But Pharaoh has a part in that as well. That amount of sales is just not their expectations. Their expectations were between 1 and 2 million people should purchase it, because that is typically speaking how many people purchase a Total War game. And so if we use Pharaoh as a metric, if we get more of these apathetic type games that people are just not interested in, that just aren't talking about, they're just not interested in it, Total War will fall, because they will get smaller and smaller and smaller as they get more niche, and then eventually the entire company will collapse. So it is way more preferable for Creative Assembly to release a game like Rome 2 or Total War Warhammer in a terrible state and then fix it afterwards, than to release something like Pharaoh, to which very few people care. If you have a look at what happened on YouTube as an example with Pharaoh, in terms of the overall amount of activity on Total War, the vast majority of Total War channels never made any video or comment on Total War Pharaoh, because they recognize that it was a waste of time. I only speak about it in terms of these kind of videos here, but I've never made any content on Total War Pharaoh, because I knew what was going to happen. I knew it was going to be of just no interest, because they didn't understand what the players want, but I knew straight away that wasn't it. I knew it wasn't what I wanted, and I knew it wasn't what the players wanted. And a lot of game journalists, which he goes into in this one here, praised Total War Pharaoh, but the thing to understand is that game journalism doesn't mean anything. I think most of us recognize that game journalism doesn't mean anything. We only really follow IGN for the memes. Oh, look, there's another 7 out of 10 for the next Ubisoft slop. And I think the reason why this happens, and this has been said a lot of times, is that games companies can be massive fuckheads, basically, and not give out review codes to critics if they are too harsh to them. And so if you're a games journalist company and you need to get an article or a review out on a certain game, and you know that company is particularly temperamental, then maybe you're going to pad your review and be like, oh yeah, 7 out of 10 is pretty good. Yeah, it's pretty good. It's just not too bad. And hang on, let's get into Steam again here. Hang on, stop that. I was in Hearts of Iron 4, but I'll bring that up in a moment. So I want to go to Total War Pharaoh. So I want to go to this one here, and they'll pad their review to keep the games company happy, so that they can do something like this. Where is it? It's in here somewhere. Where is it? Maybe it's... hang on. There we go. That's what I'm looking for here. There we go. Look at all this. Oh, 9 out of 10. 90 out of 10. 9500. 9 out of 10. 8 out of 10. IGN. 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10. Look at these games journalists. Look at this. Look at this shit. You know, it's like the games journalists are fucking incorrect most of the time. But you know why they do this stuff? Because Creative Assembly is extremely temperamental. They're little babies. And if you don't play ball with them, they won't play ball with you. And if they can't get the review copies, they can't get the articles out, they can't get paid. So they've got to play they've got to play Creative Assembly's game, essentially. And so Creative Assembly gets to put all this, oh, look at this, the 10 out of 10 for everyone here. But how many of the YouTubers do they put in here? They never put a YouTuber in there because it's like, oh, yeah, 6 out of 10 or 5 out of 10 or something like that. And look, it's all just here. Historical Total War is back, baby. Oh, yeah, it's totally back. It's back. This is literally the worst release of all time. Is a success. What a fucking success. Hang on, let me just go back. What a fucking success. Look at that. What a huge success. Indie game numbers right there. So, as I said, the games journalists, they're completely fucked with this kind of stuff. It's maybe not even their fault. Because they have to deal with baby developer companies that just that are super temperamental, that'll withhold the keys if they don't give them a reasonably high score. But you notice nobody gave them a 10 out of 10, because you wouldn't. Anyway. Okay, so then I want to get into the next part of the topic that I really want to get to. This is really the final bit of it. And that is when people say that, oh, but you can't go back to history after fantasy. Fantasy killed history for me. And I can kind of explain why this has happened within Total War and how this is not actually the real case of things. If anything, there is more demand for a good historical Total War game than there is for a good fantasy Total War game, like Total War Warhammer. There's way bigger potential. It's just that Creative Assembly doesn't capitalize on it very well at all. And so I'll use some specific examples. Now, this is why I had Hearts of Iron 4 up before, because I was just checking. Oh, God, hang on. Yeah, there it is. So Hearts of Iron 4. Now, I know that this is, World War II. World War II is just not the same thing as medieval. I get that. I'll use a few examples, right? So Hearts of Iron 4, it's a game that came out in 2016. So it's been in development for 8 years, which is, don't forget, that's when freaking Warhammer 1 came out. So this is a game that has had essentially the same amount of development time as Total War Warhammer, 1, 2, and 3, and has 53,000 concurrent players, 8 years after it's been launched. And if we have a look at Warhammer 3 right now, it's at 24,000 people. So Hearts of Iron 4, a historical game with no real-time battles, it is only grand strategy, has half as many people as that Paradox game. Creative Assembly is not as big as Paradox by a very large margin. But let's not just use Hearts of Iron 4. Let's go and use the medieval time period. Crusader Kings 3. Crusader Kings 3 came out in 2020. So it is older than Total War Warhammer 3. And of course, there was Crusader Kings 2 before that as well. And if we have a look at this, it has as many people playing it now as Total War Warhammer 3. It's the exact same number of people. If Creative Assembly made a good Medieval 3, a really good one, this number here would go down, and I would be very surprised if Medieval 3 couldn't absolutely smash this number right here. I'd be very surprised if they made it good. But that's the big question here, is they have to make it so good that it has wide appeal. Now, Paradox is typically speaking pretty good with it. They definitely fail with some things, like, for example, Victoria 3 and Imperator Rome. There's plenty of examples of Paradox failing. And I'm definitely not trying to say, oh, Paradox is better than Creative Assembly, even though they are. But there are so many more success stories within Creative Assembly within Paradox than there are within Creative Assembly. But also, if we have a look at Medieval 2 currently, so many people still play. 18 years old, and it still has 4,000 people playing it. And you could very easily say as well, oh, but Legend, most of those people are just playing Third Age Total War. I'm sure a lot of those people are, but at the end of the day, Medieval 2 was such a good game that it had such mod replayability. And you know what the funny thing is? Crusader Kings 3 has modability. There are overhaul mods for Crusader Kings 3. So I'm pretty sure there's a Warhammer 1. I think there's a Lord of the Rings. I'm not entirely sure. And so you can make the exact same argument that maybe a lot of people are are actually playing some sort of mod for Crusader Kings 3 here as well. And maybe the same thing with Hearts of Iron 4. Now, one thing that you don't see happening with the newer Total War games is these massive overhauls. It's definitely possible for them to make it, but it ends up taking them like a decade. Like there's a overhaul mod for Shogun 2 and Total War Attila that brings them into Lord of the Rings, but it's taken them like a decade to learn it. But luckily they're catching up a bit quicker, because now we're getting sort of map overhauls for Total War Warhammer 3 in regard to the Old World mod. So it's definitely possible that this stuff is going to catch up over time. But I think that Total War games are a lot more difficult to mod than Paradox games. That being said, I'm not into modding. I don't do any of it, so I can't really say from personal experience. But the whole argument, the point I'm trying to make here, is that you can't dismiss the value of the historical fan base. It's bigger than Warhammer. Maybe not as big as Warhammer 40k. I guess we'll see how that goes when the time comes. But if there's these arguments of like, oh, just dismiss everyone that likes history because fantasy is where it's at, that's just such a stupid statement. It's not that there isn't a huge historical fan base. It's just that they're super disenfranchised. They're not interested, disillusioned with the games that are coming out. And it's important to get them back and talk about what they want, so that Creative Assembly can actually make it, so that they can have a historical Total War game with wide appeal. And the way that we're going to do that is by having these conversations and not dismissing each other's point of view. The market is out there. People are willing to spend the money. I am certain that if Creative Assembly made a Medieval 3 that was in the same spirit as Medieval 2, not saying it has to be exactly the same sort of spirit of it, where the battles feel good and the campaign aspect feels good and the characters you really feel for them, that you would bring a lot of these old Total War players straight back in, and then they would become the new Total War fans again. And I think one of the things that will help that happening is, again, don't dismiss other people's point of views about what they desire. Stop using the arguments of purity, because it's a stupid argument. And respect each other's opinions. If you like a game for whatever reason, don't let anyone tell you that you like something that you shouldn't, or dislike. Anyway, because that's something that Pixelated Apollo does a little bit in here as well. Actually does it a fair bit. Basically say that the Warhammer games are bad. The Warhammer games, you may not like them, but they're not objectively bad. They're objectively good because a lot of people play them. And who are you to say that some people, shouldn't like something, especially subjective taste? And I also agree that too much of Warhammer's mechanics have been seeped into historical Total War games. That is absolutely true. There's way too much. I mean, if you have a look at Pharaoh and Troy, both of those games are built off the Warhammer engine, and that game just doesn't handle historical type content very well. Like, it doesn't handle infantry type combat very well at all. So it was kind of doomed for those battles to just not be very good. Anyway, I think I've covered everything that I want to cover here. There's more in here that he went on about, but I didn't want to cover every little bit. I do hope that some people decide to make reactions on this and that we discuss about it. I don't hope that everyone agrees with everything that I have to say, but what I hope is that you will talk about it and we can get to the bottom of what is going on with Total War. What do you want out of it? And hopefully Creative Assembly can sift through the shit and figure out what is going to make the best Medieval 3 they possibly can, because that is what's going to benefit everyone. And again, stop invalidating everyone else's opinions. That's the most important thing. Intermingle with each other, respect each other's opinions, and we'll see you next time. Later, guys.